If you're a fan of the iconic Sir Brian May, like I am, then today you're in for a treat. We are going to look at the Vox Brian May MV50 guitar head. Let's go. Now, before we jump into the tone, let's talk about the design. As you can see, it definitely has a bit of that red special theme going on, which is awesome. The iconic Brian May guitar. This 50-watt amplifier comes in a very small chassis, really tiny, very light, quite nice in terms of construction. Feels actually very, very solid, which I really like. Let's start by saying I just generally on these what are they called? Nutube Vox amps. I'm not 100% sold on the way they look. I find them a bit awkward, maybe like a 1950s spaceship. But hey, this one looks nice. I very much like the Vox symbol here with this nice graphic and Sir Brian May's signature here. So very cool. Now let's have a quick look at the controls. It won't take long because they're very simple. At the front, we have gain, tone, and volume, and then input. You have the little meter here that tells you how loud your output is. So you only have a general tone knob. You don't have a 3-band EQ or anything, but let's see how that sounds. So the volume is the one in white. The chicken head knobs look very cool, actually, and they feel great. If we turn it around, this is where all the magic happens. So what we have is a headphone or an emulated line out. Very cool. So there is an emulated line level, line out that you can plug in directly into your audio interface. So that is a nice addition by Vox, or you can use it with headphones for silent practicing. Afterwards, you have an ecosystem on and off, little tiny switches here, which essentially just means after a while that you don't use it, it turns itself off to save energy, which is all good because we love our planet. Then moving on, you have a standby on and off. Then power plug, which it comes with a power wall plug. Then you have an EQ, a fairly standard EQ switch. Basically, it goes from flat to deep, which is useful to have depending on what guitars you kind of have. If you're running a Strat through it, which is very bright, then you can put it on deep and a little more bass sound out of it. So it's fairly useful to have. And then something which is very, very cool on this is you have a multi-impedance switch right here. This teeny little switch goes from 4 ohms to 8 to 12 ohms. Obviously, if I can read correctly, the 4 ohms gives you the full 50-watt power. The 8 divided by 2 goes to 25. Then the 16 goes to 12.5. So depending what cabs you want to put it in, it will give you whatever power you get out of it. Then, obviously, you have the speaker out. Most of you that know the product will be thinking, hey, he's missed something out at the back. No, I've left it for last because this is the coolest thing. And this here is the thing that makes this Brian May Vox amp very special. And what it is, it's essentially a treble boost. What they've included is a really cool treble boost function. Brian May famously got his sound very simply copying Roy Gallagher by just putting a very simple treble boost in front of his amp and pushing it to the max. That's how he makes it sing, coupled with the specifics of his Red Special guitar. That's his iconic sound. Really simple. There's nothing to it. And this is exactly what they worked on doing for this mini amp. So what they've done is they've added a treble boost at the front. You can't mess around with it. It's just simply on or off. That's it. There's no messing around. But as we'll see in our sound samples, it has a really cool effect. So I think that is about it. Let's move on. Okay, guys, let's stop wasting time and plug this baby in. I will be playing my vintage T-style guitar. I don't have a Red Special. It's not my fault no one sent me one. So let's try and see if I can channel my inner Brian May and see what this tiny baby can do. Let's do it. All right, let's talk about the tone because that's where the MV50 really shines. This amp is all about capturing Brian May's signature tone, and boy, does it deliver. Honestly, as soon as I plugged it in, I couldn't help but start playing some of those riffs that I grew up listening to, some of those iconic Brian May guitar parts. It really immediately brings you to those sounds that he made famous and that we all love. Those nice, harmonically rich chords. The solos are sweet, singing. Brian May's number one thing, yes, it's his playing. He's got a very vocal playing style, but that vocal playing style also comes from the sound he gets from his Vox amplifiers. And I've got to say, this, for me, really nails it on the head. It's a very traditional Vox amp. It sounds like an AC30, very, very good. But at the same time, with the addition of the treble boost, it really brings you into that distorted Brian May sound. If you add a chorus pedal, for example, or you add a few pedals to it as well, it sounds unbelievably good. So if you're in a Brian May or a Queen cover band, I would look no further because this is it. We have to remember that the MV50 has very simple controls. So, as I said at the beginning, gain, tone, and volume. Don't be fooled, though. You can get a variety of sounds from it. Again, always in the Vox ballpark, because that's what this amp is about. It's not trying to be anything else. It's a Vox. It's Brian May's Vox. It's Brian May's sound. So it's not going to depart anywhere from there. But you can get, by putting the gain down, raising the volume, turning off the treble boost, you can get some very nice, clean Vox sounds. You can get some very nice, slight edge of breakup if you put the treble boost, or if you turn the gain up slightly. The tone, again, works very nicely, very responsive, and having the additional feature of a flat or deep EQ at the back is also very nice for a very simple change of guitars. You put that on deep or flat. If you've got a already dark guitar, put it on flat and it works perfectly. So versatile within the Vox sounds. As simple as that. Also, for all you rock players out there, don't forget that Vox amps, when pushed with a treble boost or whatever, have a fair amount of gain on tap, right? So they do sound nice and heavy. You can get some very cool classic rock. This is a classic rock amp, so you're not going to get thrash metal out of a Vox amp. But if you like some good old rock and roll, hard rock sounds, Vox amps are capable of doing that. It's not going to be Mesa Boogie type, but you're going to have a special sound that is famous for cutting through mixes. So as a producer, one of the things I look for in a lot of amps is the ability to not sound muddy, not add too much just general mud to the recording process. Well, then I'll have to spend hours trying to clean it up in post-production. That's not what I want. And that's exactly what a Vox amp does. It cuts through. It has that almost nasal mid-range sound, which is at the same time rich, but is perfect. So if you blend it with a Marshall-style amp, ideal, really cool. Even Guns N' Roses used to do that. If you remember Gilby Clarke, when he had his stint in GNR, well, Slash was using his Marshalls, Gilby was using Voxes on the other side. So it sounded really, really cool. It's a classic combination. So remember that if you're looking for a way to cut in your mix to get an extra special little bite and play off different style of amps, Voxes generally are very good. And this one is no exception. It sounds awesome. And you can get some nice high gain-ish sounds out of it. So hopefully, as you've heard in some of the sound samples, one of the things I really like about this MV50 is the way it responds to picking. So whether it's got to do with this Nutube technology, whatever it is, but it's a very, very responsive sound. So if you play with your fingers, or if you're playing with a pick, or if you roll down your volume and tone, it is incredibly responsive, which is also the way I think Brian May plays. He does use his volume control quite a lot. He picks very differently. He's got a very soft touch sometimes, and then he goes for those big open chords. So I really like how responsive this is. It feels very tubey. I know it's got this Nutube in it, but it does feel very tubey. It doesn't feel artificial, and it doesn't have all those horrible artifacts that you get in a lot of digital gear. Now let's talk about the heart of this amp, the Nutube technology. It's a modern vacuum tube that's designed to deliver the warm, harmonically rich tones of traditional tubes, but in a smaller and more reliable package. The MV50's Nutube technology provides authentic, tube-like response and saturation, giving you that classic Brian May sound in a compact and portable format. And speaking of portability, the MV50, we've got to know that it is the perfect size. It's tiny, so ideal for a gigging musician, for bringing it to jam practice if you're going to someone else's house, ideal for band rehearsal as well. You shove this in your pocket, that small, and you just go. It's really wonderful as well in that same frame of mind that you can use three different impedances for cabs. So if you know that the recording studio or jam or your buddy's house has an 8 ohm cab, you can bring it to 8 ohms and you can play with it. So it's very, very nice that this is made exactly for someone who just wants to put it in his pocket and go. Really, you don't need an overdrive pedal because you've got the treble booster in it. If you've got a fairly simple sound with no effects, except for this, your guitar and a lead, you don't need anything else. All right, guys, it's the moment of truth. What do I think about you? So, as I said at first, I am a massive Brian May fan. I love his style of guitar playing. I think he's actually one of the most unique players. He's one of those players that knows the sound he likes, and he knows how to phrase guitar lines and guitar solos perfectly. For him, it's an extension of the vocal line. So his guitar solos have the air, have the pauses, have the breadth of vocal lines. And that's what I love. And that's for me what guitar playing is all about. So when this came out, I got really excited. And having received it, I must say, I'm really, really happy that the first thing that I did when I plugged it in was start playing Queen songs, because it obviously hits the nail on the head. It gets you immediately into the ballpark of that sound. And that's fantastic. That's exactly what a signature little amp like this should do, right? Get you immediately to play the songs from the band, whatever band that is. And it gives, in a very, very small footprint, a huge sound. If you plug this in to your audio interface and then run a program like Two Notes or Celestion and pair it with the correct speakers, ideally not V30s, then it will sound massive. Put a bit of reverb on it and it sounds incredible. I really love the sounds you can get out of it. So just to be clear, this is not a versatile amp in the sense it's not an amp that you will be able to play a lot of things with. It's just an amp that, if you like the Vox typical sound, it does it really well. So I very much like this amp because, like, I guess, some of the other small amps that I highly rate, like the Laney, like the Orange, it sound very well. It doesn't want to do 3 million sounds. It just wants to do one sound, and it does it really well. Now, obviously, there's a bit of range there. You can go from clean to slightly distorted, but fundamentally, it just does Vox sounds, Brian May-ish Vox sounds very, very well. So I really appreciate things that are intellectually honest, and I find this product to be intellectually very honest. It just wants to do what it does very well. Now, a few of the points that I don't particularly like, but again, are not deal breakers, but I think they're worth pointing out. As usual, you don't have an effects loop. And that, for me, is an ongoing battle, and you'll get bored of me saying it, but it would have been fantastic to get an effects loop in this, because if you run a chorus pedal, a phaser, whatever, a delay, you're going to have a few issues here. So an effects loop would have been fantastic. A second thing that I'm not particularly keen on is you've got a very nice headphone or line out using the same plug, which is fantastic. I really like that. So when you're using a headphone or line out to go into your audio interface, you have a built-in cab, which you can just record straight through. And it sounds very good. I didn't use it for this demo, but it does sound good. Would it have been that difficult to have the option of turning that cab off so you could use the line out directly into your audio interface and then add your own IR or cab? You see, that for me would have made it so much more efficient as a guitarist and as a producer. It would have made it so much better. You don't, in that case, need to run through a torpedo capture to bring it down to line level through the cab section. So it's a very small thing, but for me, the ability to turn off the inbuilt cab simulation on and off is quite a substantial thing that makes my life easier when I'm recording guitars. So those really are my main issues with the design of this cab. There may be, as I always say, there may be reasons why that's not technically possible, whether it's price range, whether it's footprint, whatever it is, I don't know. I'm not a amp designer. I'm a stupid guitarist. But that would have made it really good. An effects loop and the ability to turn the cabs on and off. I love the treble boost. The included treble boost is fantastic. Sounds awesome. I love it. So that is great. So overall, guys, I think this is a fantastic product. It comes in about $250. It's not the cheapest amp head you can find, but you know, a signature amp. Sir Brian May needs to make a few bucks off of it, so it makes sense. That's not an issue for me. So if you are into the classic Vox sound, if you're a fan of Queen, if you're a fan of classic rock, you can't go wrong with this. If you can live with the fact that you don't have an effects loop and you can't turn the cab sim off, so you'd ideally have to run it through something that brings it back down to line level, then this is a great amp. I love it because it has loads of attitude and it rocks. It totally rocks. Perfect also if you're a recording artist in a studio, you can just bring it along and you know what sound you're going to get every time. So be good. I'll put, as usual, all the links down below for your information. Make sure to go check this amp out. And do me a favor, hit that subscribe, leave loads of comments. Let me know if you need any information on this amp or any other amp in the series. And rock on, enjoy your life, and be good.